In today's edition of Scouse Pop, we'll be joined by one of Liverpool's most iconic songwriters and performers, Colin Vearncombe. Many will identify Colin as the artist known as Black. Colin had massive hit singles and albums in the 1980s. However, this is only one small part of Colin's long and distinguished career as one of the greatest singer-songwriters to emerge from Liverpool. Colin also writes poetry books and illustrates them with his own artwork. So, Colin, welcome back to Liverpool.
Thanks, Paul.
You're not from these parts anymore, Colin.
It's been a long time, no? I was snagged by London in the late 80s for work reasons. And then I was just about to move back and I met the lady that became my wife and we lived 16 years in London, and then I thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to get out. And we had done a deal that we wouldn't live in Stockholm or we wouldn't live in Liverpool. We wouldn't be the tag on to our spouses, friends, etc. So we went to Ireland.
So I'm just going to take you right back to when you were in Liverpool as a young man in the 1980s. And what were your recollections of those early days, your early sort of Black days?
Cluelessness, desperation, occasional and intense periods of inspiration, and me and my brothers are very stubborn, and sometimes that's a help. So I stayed with the thing that I was obsessed with, which was music, until I made it. It was only later that I realised I hadn't really troubled myself to define what it was. So I got into a bit of trouble with it, but that was something else I'm sure we'll touch on later. But it was the days of, we used to share everything, members of other bands, equipment. I think we touched on each other.
We did,
darling.
We did.
You had a cornet player in this final. Jim Short, was that?
Short, that's
right. Borrowed him once. He was just next door in the studio, and I think that early single I did for Pete Fullwell with Dave Dix. I'd just been introduced to Dave Dix not long before. So it was in no money, clothes you stood up in pretty much kind of thing, but it was very exciting.
Can you remember things about the music scene at the time, who you were associating with, and what you felt about, the innovative bands that were coming out of Liverpool at the time?
Well, like everyone else that was seriously interested in music, you were trying to get in to Eric's before you were legally of age to do it. I was 15 when I managed to first successfully navigate the doorway. I think that was Deaf School. I'm not sure. The particular wave that I was in, there was a whole lot of us. By the time I was 19, 20, I was living away from home. Let's see, I'll be in Huyton, I think, at the time. A bit later, I was living by Sefton Park itself. And seeing people like the Bunnymen walking around, and I was still in awe, because the Bunnymen were a very formative band for me. After Queen, can you believe? Mac would be disgusted, but Queen exerted an incredible pull on me. And I'm amazed that I didn't think they were weird then, because I think they're very, very weird now. And I did have a laugh with Brian about it once, because they're the strangest band ever to break big. But the Bunnymen afterwards, and I didn't twig that they just lifted Apocalypse Now, etc. It was just my imagination was there to be opened and stimulated and widened and kicked into the outer reaches, and that's what people like that were doing to me then. And it was kind of a halcyon period. There was a can-do feeling, with Zoo Records, to a slightly lesser extent Inevitable Records, in your city. And people were turning up to see Liverpool bands because they were interested in what was coming out of Liverpool, and you felt like it could be done. And that makes a huge difference when you're a young person. I don't suppose people in many other cities in the north of England feel anything like that.
So when you left Prescott High School and you joined forces with Greg Leyland and Dave Golding to form your band, what were you hoping to achieve with them? Were you hoping to break into mainstream pop music and maybe make a living at it, or?
I had very much wanted to make a living. I was one of those naive people that walk around saying, if I could just make a living, then I'd be happy. I don't need any more than that. And you're just being a slightly disingenuous. You know, there's always the sex and drugs to be considered, isn't there? Possible byproducts of fame and the like. Not that any of that really much ever turned up for me. I think it's anathema. But I couldn't really speak for Greg because I never knew what he wanted from it. He was the one that had a job. He was the drummer. He had a car. He could get his drum kit in his Volkswagen Beetle. We were on the bus with the amps. I can't believe we used to do that. The electric fire, yeah.
Looked like an electric
the
fire.
burns, it did. But it was a nice little amp. It just wasn't completely appropriate for the job in hand. So I was often borrowing something. I don't know how we had the balls to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I do see some kids do it now.
Yeah.
Still, you know, on the tube in London or whatever. They're with, you know, they're carrying the instruments to the gig, which I think is good. It's good grounding, because I haven't really got much for the fame school approach. I don't think it's realistic. Ours is an apprenticeship-based industry. You can't stand at the blackboard and learn it.
No. I was just going to ask, actually, because when we did the interview for the book, for the Scouse Pop book, this is one of the things you actually said to me about innovation. You said quite a few bands in Liverpool at the time were talking about being original, but were skipping from one style of the moment to the next, grabbing on the coattails of the power pop thing or the new romantic thing. I just stubbornly believe they had something different to contribute, and that was worth paying attention to. And I had nothing at all with which to back that up with. Were you making a conscious effort to be different then, Colin?
No, I was just, I hoped.
Yeah.
It is the arrogance of youth. I mean, I will say that, you know, thinly veiled by whatever I said after the attempted self-deprecation. I just had a look at what I was doing, and it didn't seem to me much like what other people were attempting. But then, you see, you can't get what I was attempting from hearing what I was doing, because I wasn't very good at it at that period. I say the execution of it, the presentation of it, were not consistent with what I was really hoping to get going. I had to be learned, and I didn't know it, but I had thousands of hours of singing lessons to come, and terrible moments.
So I was going to say, and people probably wouldn't recognise the music you were doing then compared to what you do now. There was a completely different style.
It was very Bunnyman influenced, if I recall. Although, interesting thing is, a guy called Peter Feedes, a journalist, just got me into Soho Radio a couple of weeks ago in London, and he dug out the first single, which apparently has appeared on one of these Cherry Red collections of music from the 80s, a kind of a box set CD thing, and it's called Human Features, which, if I recall, Greg funded, the drummer, Greg Leyland, and he got his money back first, and then all we could do was divvy up the records. I was taking the train down to London and stuff to deliver them personally to Rough Trade, because I thought I might get into a conversation that might lead to. I was hustling then, even though I hated it. I'm not a natural born hustler, but he played this track, and he went, "That does not remind me of the Smiths." I said, "It does a bit." He said, "But the Smiths didn't exist for another 3 years." And I thought, whoa, am I a pioneer? Oh! In my clumsy attempts to rip off something for one act, I've managed to... No, I don't think so. But the guy that came in, James Brown, have you heard of James Brown, that started Loaded magazine? I think it was a lads magazine, football and music. I went, "Yeah, I don't know if it remind me of the Smiths, that." Yeah, great, you know. It wasn't great, but it is quite startling. Well, 1981, that would be.
Well, we haven't actually got that one lined up to play now, but we are actually going to play an a cappella version of Wonderful Life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, thank you.
Here I go, out to sea again. The sunshine fills my head, and dreams hang in the air. Gulls in the sky and in my blue eye. You know it feels unfair. There's magic everywhere. But look at me standing here on my own again. Up straight in the sunshine, no need to run and hide. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. No need to laugh or cry. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. The sun's in your eyes, the heat is in your hair. They seem to hate you because you're there. And I need a friend, oh, I need a friend to make me happy, not stand here on my own. But look at me standing here on my own again. Up straight in the sunshine, no need to run and hide. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. No need to laugh or cry. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. No need to run and hide. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. No need to laugh and cry. It's so wonderful, wonderful life. A wonderful life.
And welcome back to part 2 of Scouse Pop, where we'll be discussing the changing musical direction for Colin in the mid-1980s. So, we were talking just before, Colin, about your early incarnation of Black. There was a real metamorphosis, going to say, in the mid-1980s, where you changed completely in terms of style, in terms of instrumentation, the vocal changed, all sorts of different aspects of your music. Really started to form. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Well, like I'd say, the trio was occasionally a quartet. Actually, I'd forgotten. There was a guy called Nick was with us for a while. I was always wanting to experiment, but opportunities were limited. It's a bit like if you only go out for a meal once a month, you probably go to your favourite place and order the same thing. You don't want to take a risk with your ultimate jollies. But come 1982, Pete Fulwell got interested, who was managing Pete Wiley and War at the time, and It's Immaterial, and always interested, particularly actually in the L8 culture and the young Black community that, as he said, had never been represented musically. I wouldn't include the one I can think of that I can't remember the name of. Anyway, it's another story. No, I was actually thinking of it was kind of a boy band thing, wasn't it?
Sorry,
It was like a long time ago. But he introduced me to Dave Dix, who was in a band called The Last Chant, which was a kind of high life, some juju, Fela Kuti crossed with the Velvet Underground type band, which is very interesting. But they were a stop-starty affair. We were put together. He liked to push buttons. I liked to write songs and sing them. And we started doing the night shift. And then we made a single, was it 82? Got lucky, got picked up by Warner Brothers. Was that lucky or unlucky? I probably would have been better remaining indie longer, the two of us, because we had imaginations that refused to be fettered. We were young men, arrogant, pretending not to be, that kind of, so, yeah.
Because then that deal finished, didn't it? And I'm jumping ahead a bit now, but I remember having a conversation with him in 1985 in the Ministry rehearsal rooms, and you'd had a pretty disastrous year, and your record company had dropped you, and you were telling me about this song you'd written, Wonderful Life, and I thought nothing of it then. I just knew, you'd written it.
I actually mentioned a song that I'd written to you.
You did, yeah.
That was a very unusual thing for me to do.
It was. It was odd because the next recollection of it was I was driving through Liverpool some months later, and a DJ called Terry Lenane, who used to do the disco show, was substituting for somebody.
Yeah.
And he put on this record and said, this is a fantastic record, and if there's any major record companies out there, you want to go and sign this band now, because this is going to be an enormous record, enormous song. And then he played Wonderful Life. Well, I didn't think it was you. I didn't recognise it as being something that you'd do. So, I mean, I think that's been interesting. How did that come about? Because, you've got marimbas, you've got these different voices on it.
Well, I largely grew up in the studio. Wasn't terribly good live, to be honest, early on. Well, I'm saying I had no idea at the time. I didn't think I was any worse than anyone else, so that kept me in the game, despite all the "don't give up your day job" comments and the like. But that's you really do need the sensitivity of a butterfly with the hide of a rhinoceros to function in this business, and. Let's see, Steve Baker, that used to work for Pete Fullwell, taken over my management after I was at the point, pretty much, that I was dropped by WEA. Dave Dix and I split as a duo, but continued to work together. And I had this song, and I had been offered singles deals again, but I said, I really don't want to do that, spend another couple of years while they shunt me from one slide rule formula to another. I mean, in the 80s, you have to remember, everyone believed that there was a magic formula. And if you just went in the right studio with the right people, you'd come out with the right thing, and the right thing was a hit. You see, there's forgetting the reams and reams of great records that were never singles or never hits or whatever. Anyway, that's what we were all pressed into at that time.
And so you recorded Wonderful Life and Sweetest Smile in one session, was that right, at Hamby Studio?
No, not actually, because I had a conversation with Steve, and he said, look, I've got some money that's got to go to the taxman if it doesn't get, so why don't we put my money where your mouth is, and we'll cut this, and we'll see if we can create more smoke from the same fire. And that's what we did. I sat down with Dave Dixon. We wrote out an hourly schedule for what was going to happen at what point, and pretty much it worked, being that organised. Because I'd already done at least a demo or two of it, So we're not trying to pluck genius out of this genius. We made it as an indie single anyway, and it caught to a certain degree. Phone started ringing. We pulled it, knowing that we'd go back to it later. And then we did do more work on it. I don't think we did more. It was recorded in Pink, Hamby Studio. We did more work on it over in Bury and in London as well. The Sweetest Smile was recorded in Pink as well. This is Pink. Pink is the studio I remember most from the early days. I mean, there was a guy there, Pete Davis, who used to, I think he managed Hamby. Or he was an inspector for the Social Security. He was rumoured to be one of those guys. He was interesting, all right. Okay. But I have him to thank.
Well, we're going to cut to your the next track, and this is The Sweetest Smile.
Must be made of clay, 'cause everyone said it would be broken someday. And now I've come to that fateful day. So I sit on the floor with my head in my hands. And don't tell me how to make it pay. I write a new song every day. I just wish I was made of wood. I might not feel pain, even if I should, even if I should. If I should. The sweetest smile that ever did melt the pats in a butter dish. And if you could have believed in me, well, I swear to God, I'd have made damn sure our hearts were warm and glad with wine. I keep the doors locked all the time. I just wish I was made of wood. You might not seem glad, even if you should, even if you should. Must be made of clay, as everyone said it would be broken someday. But now I've come to that fateful day, so I sit on the floor with my head in my hands, with my head in my hands. With my head in my hands. If I should, if I should.
Welcome back to part 3 and I'll look at the musical career of Colin Vearncombe. And it's the period when Colin's career came to national and international prominence we're going to look at now. So, after that you recorded The Sweetest Smile and you've recorded Wonderful Life, you get signed by another record company, A&M, and The Sweetest Smile becomes a hit. You go on top of the pops. It's international success. What was that like, Colin? You know, you're going from one thing straight catapulted into, you know, the media frenzy that is the pop music world.
Frankly, surreal. Yeah, I mean, you've grown up the way you've grown up. You've had the dreams you've had, and a lot of them have been about this. Yeah. And then it comes to it. Will the reality match the dream? Well, what do you think?
I don't know. Colin, you with that.
Rubbish. It's doing Top of the Pops was one of the single greatest disappointments of my life, and still a buzz. You were there. Yeah. You knew the difference it made. Frankly, I was bricking myself because I had insisted that I would sing live vocal. I was not going to do this lame thing, and they let me. And whilst I can only, I think, about 3 out of 4 notes were in. The rest was, I was appalled. Oh. It was the age of, I could see who's got the cameras shooting up the skirts of the girls on the top of the things, you know, that whole sexual harassment culture was very much in place, you know, the late 80s. And I met Savile, you know, and I got creeped out by him, you know, and it was all right in front of you, but you couldn't tell what it was. So it was, you remember this as well, this is not long after Liverpool in uproar, Thatcher, miners' strike, Derek Hatton, Liverpool City Council. All these things piled on top of each other. This is your way out, and it's worse than the thing you're trying to escape from. Interesting, all right. Yeah.
But even so, I mean, I'm looking at this out. 1.2 million copies. I mean, these are huge, huge sales.
Not by Michael Jackson's standards, but to be told in some places of Britain I was outselling him 3-1 at the time was a bit hard to take on board. Truth is, I just didn't know why. And I still don't. If it had just been about that one song, there would have been a much more predictable trajectory what happened afterwards. But 1.2 million and counting, you know. Yeah. People say to me, why did you never think of re-releasing? Why? It never went away. That song. Yeah. Sweetest. It depends which country you go to. They in Eastern Europe and Germany and across to Russia, they think of me as a rock act because they love Everything's Coming Up Roses. They think that's the Dogs Swingers, you know. And so if I go there, I have to put something different together.
So you projected onto this international stage. In fact, you mentioned Queen before, but of course, they were your backing band at one point. I was seeing that concert where you sang wonderful, and Brian May is playing the guitar.
He's the only one. He's the only one. Roger did a later one of those. Yeah. I met him. That was interesting.
So you're on world tours and things like. What was that like for those those years? I think it was a couple of years.
Could you remember? It's. To be honest, look, I've been doing this. I've been releasing records since 1981, so that's 33 years. And apart from about 2 years, it's been like pushing string uphill. You know, what I'd say on balance, I enjoy pushing string uphill more. The other 2 years being famous, I don't remember, but everyone wants a piece of you, and I was not robust enough. I didn't have the strength of character, the determination to really pull that off. So I got mashed. Yeah. And
so I was going to come on to the next part, really, because then you take a step back after this whirlwind. I mean, 2 world tours. 2 world tours in 2 years, I think, was it? Is that right? You went around the world twice. Yeah. Australia, big in Australia.
Not big compared to tours like bands do now. I mean, people go out for 18 months sometimes. Yeah, they come home, but they're just on or off the road. That's the life, you know. I haven't had a touring life like that. And you do get into the swing of it. So I've really only learned how to play live in the last few years, properly. And that's because I deliberately did tiny, tiny rooms in Ireland, this close, where I'm looking at them and I can tell that they don't want me to look at them any more than I want them to look at me. You've got to find a way of getting through maybe a 2-hour set. Yeah. Then you're bulletproof. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
you took a step back and you started off your own label. What was that about? Control, or what did you do that for?
Well, yeah. increasingly frustrated, not just me, but my management structure as well, with what we perceived as the willful obstruction of the very people that were supposed to be shoulder to shoulder to you, with get the music made and get it out. Because they have a different agenda, basically. Their agenda is, if it's worked, let's have another one of those. Same but different. And in essence, because none of us are really that good, we do a version of the same but different. But sometimes it just doesn't seem like that. You know, the Beatles were very consistently inconsistent, I would say. It's always obviously them. But they did shoot off in quite a few different directions, didn't they? And I reckon I did something like that made me potentially of appeal to everyone, because I'm not a genre artist. I'm not a soul artist or a country artist or a whatever. But that's a marketing man's nightmare. They don't know who to pitch you to, because it's everyone.
I'm just going to come on to one of the tracks that we're going to play next, which is Walking on Frozen Water. You had a bit of a break for a few years before in between that, and then you come back with that. Yeah. So when you came back, what made you want to come back and start recording again? Is that just something that you just put to one
there's
side?
Always something some music that pulls me back into music, because I'm a fan foremost, like most people that you meet. If they're not an arrogant idiot, and I mean like one of those that you read about, someone that Russell Brand would play in a movie, then they're probably all right. You know, if you meet someone like Phil Collins, two things you're aware of: he's not trying. He is so good that he's just got nothing to prove to you. And I'm not saying I like his songs or anything, but if you work in a room with that guy, you know who's on top of his job, and he's always been right on top of his job. Fair enough, we got on real well. Other people, right. Well, this is this kind of trumped up karaoke singer age that we're in. Yeah. It's harder. They're scrapping like mad just to survive, but they're doing it in the old show business way, darling. Don't turn around. I'm carrying something sharp.
Right, well, we're going to cut to one of your tracks now, and this is Walking on Frozen Water.
Please give it up for our headliners tonight at Rock the Dog. The incredible, from Black, it's Colin Vearncombe.
I walk from Prague to Düsseldorf, from Germany to France. To earn a little extra there, I learned to dance. I dance with anyone who paid. The lean, the mean, the cruel, and those of arbitrary ways. And in an arrondissement numberless I found I passed the test. No weeping in the rain, no weeping in the rain, no weeping in the rain. I'll only do what I do, wish upon distant stars. Frozen water. Now I dream of a miracle, remember nearly not a thing. I have the words of miracle inscribed upon a ring. Wear it on my finger like a signpost, and someday I'll take the boat to Liverpool, to New York and California. I hear the oceans loud enough to swallow up your song without do nothing. No weeping in the rain, no weeping in the rain. I'll only do what I do, wish upon distant stars. Frozen water.
Oh, welcome back to part 4 in this edition of Scouse Pop. We're talking to Colin Vearncombe about his latest work in music, art and poetry. So, well, as your career has progressed, Colin, you've teamed up with Callum, and you perform with Callum now on your tours. Have the songs changed because of the change in instrumentation, or is that really just is Callum just something that you need in terms of getting your new type of music across?
We hooked up in '93, the tour I did then, which was the first indie record I made. And I got to know him from the period after that. I mean, he's from a musical dynasty. You know, his father was Ewan MacColl, his mother's Peggy Seeger. His brother Neil is a fantastic multi-instrumentalist as well, and Kirsty was his, sister, and we know all about her. So we took our time getting to know each other, probably because we're a lot like siblings. We sort of fight, disagree quite a lot, but I noticed that the end result has inevitably improved. So with the latest album, I just asked him to sit down with me and we'd write the songs together, just 50-50. He was up for it. I needed to break my mold, I felt. I was getting a bit bored with the way I was doing things musically. And frankly, getting much more interested in text and words anyway. Melodies just seem to grow out the ground for me. I've never, ever worried myself about that. But if you've got nothing to say, you're always dancing a difficult line.
He said
you could be just a pop act, but pop has come to mean a different thing in this day and age.
He said you're not a singer of songs, you actually live them, is one of his quotes. What does he mean by that, Colin?
Well, it sounds incredibly deep or
It does.
extremely fatuous. I hope that what I meant, and it's something that I get asked from time to time to do songwriting workshops or that kind of seminars or whatever, and I realised you can't teach this. People know how to do it themselves, and the people that really write the good stuff are people that break the rules and rejig the thing in their own way. And but one thing I say is I can work with you if you're blocked, because that's just your bull. Nearly said it.
Yeah.
That's just your bull that's in the way. That can go. Everyone can sing. You might not be able to sing how you want to. I always wanted to be Otis Redding. It took me a long time before I realised that I was stupid if I ever thought that a young, white, skinny, middle-class kid from Huyton was going to sound anything like Otis Redding. But that's what you do, isn't it? So, but you say, what do you think you're doing when you do this job? What is it? Well, I say that as a performer, you've got to mean what you say. And as a writer, you've got to say what you mean. And if you're not prepared to do those two things, then don't do this business. It's not for you. It requires a certain level of operating integrity and honesty to produce a work that's actually going to, first of all, please you in the long run, because otherwise you are lying to yourself. And to please others, secondary. Or you can go into show business, which is all about glorious surface, But you've got to be prepared to do the kind of things that Tarbuck and Bruce Forsyth did, whatever. Perhaps Tarbuck is a bad example. You have to remember how unusual it was for someone from Liverpool to make that kind of impact in a southern-based entertainment industry, and he really did.
So you're viewing yourself more as the artist rather than the entertainer, really?
Well, it's what I'm interested in, When I walk away from the job, I'm researching the job. I read more books than I listen to records. I wait for stuff to find me, but when I find it, I talk about it incessantly to people. When James Blake was introduced to me by my brother, I must have bought about 8 copies that I've given to people so far. Young Irish lad called Mick Flannery. When I find something that lights me up, it's like a new love affair. It's the same as it ever was. It's fantastic.
And of course, you've developed into, and I'm just looking at into a poet, and you do your own illustrations as well.
Back into it. Yeah, I'm that self-centered.
So, is this a logical progression of the songwriting, or is this a new departure, do you feel?
Well, I used to. I was one of those Adrian Mole types, I was a bit. I wanted to be sporty and a jock or whatever, but I wasn't really good enough. So I was a bit nerdy, I suppose. I was in the basketball team. Stopped playing basketball at the point where I had a choice between my fingernails and playing the game, because I play fingerstyle, and they were just constantly, so okay. It starts with that. Stopped writing poetry, was an art school dropout. At a certain point, I just started doing the two things again because it was calling me. I didn't have an idea that I was going to start trying to sell the damn stuff, but people saw the pictures and insisted, you should do, go on. And they read something and said, this is good. I said, don't sound so surprised. I'm like, private. And I started, I sold a few grand's worth of pictures last year, and on the second book, I'm fascinated by it. What I like is that the rules have gone. I don't even have to fit the words to a tune. This is unpolished Colin. If you're interested in me, what I might be thinking at all, and a lot of it is where the interior thoughts collide, whatever it is that stimulates you. I can tell I was very horny when I was writing that one, I think. And not just the picture, I mean, it's not quite what you think. That's a blind portrait, something we used to do where you don't see the paper. I do quite a lot. I did a whole bunch of these for the Blind Faith album because I was found it interesting in art school. At art school, they didn't expect you to do anything worth a damn. Nothing worth putting your name to. They were teaching you how to think and how to look. So that was all about looking at the subject, and you don't even see the marks that you make on paper, but sometimes they're close enough to representational to be interesting to look at.
And so what are your literary influences for the poetry, Colin?
I like Bukowski. I like Neruda. I like Eliot. Broad-based lot, mostly 20th century. And actually, they're probably the ones that are most like song lyrics, but just better. Dylan himself came up with some really nice.
And so, if people want to get a hold of some of your new albums and these wonderful poetry books, where can they get them from?
Well, the records have started appearing in the shops again, but colinvearncombe.com is a good place to start. You don't even need to be able to spell my name right, because it'll say, do you mean? Because there's only one and it's me, kind of thing. Although there's a Major General in America. And that'll take you to all the places for downloads or shops, the Amazons, yes, I'm on Twitter, yes, sit on my Facebook. All of that stuff, like everyone else. Yeah.
And we're going to play a final track from your latest album, Blind Faith, and this is called Ashes of Angels.
Did I do wrong to hurry on? Things moving so fast, I couldn't hold on. I'm the kind of fool that gets offended when I'm lied to. Deep breath, no shock when everybody tries to.